Some years ago, I was chatting about God with a non-Christian student on a university campus. He was very open and sincere about exploring his questions and his doubts about God. And he'd actually moved significantly from his original assumption that Jesus was just a superstition to becoming convinced that there was excellent evidence for both belief in God and the historical claims of Jesus specifically. And yet, as we talked together over the course of several days, it became clear to me that as convinced as this guy was about Christianity already, he'd assumed that he could only make a commitment to God and become a Christian after every possible question he could think of was satisfied. So, do we need to have every conceivable question about God answered before we can make a commitment to follow Jesus? Well, the first thing to say about this question is to remember that God is not a thesis. He is a person. In other words, how we relate to God and how God relates to us is not like a theory that needs to be tested and proved abstractly, but like a person whom we increasingly learn to trust in the context of relationship. Think about it this way. The Bible says that one of the best ways of understanding the nature of God's relationship with people is through the analogy of marriage. And of course, marriage is about a relationship of faith. At its most basic level, it's about placing your trust in another person and committing your life and your future to them on the basis of the evidence that you've seen about whether they're trustworthy or whether they're not trustworthy. And of course, the only way that you can come to know another person in that way is by spending time with them and intensely getting to see and understand who they truly are in a more clear way. When Amy, my wife, and I first started dating, that's exactly what we did. Yes, it was about going for dinners and day trips and spending time with one another. But those things were really vehicles for getting to know one another, understanding each other, asking questions, both spoken and unspoken, about one another, and coming to a realization about who each other were and what we were truly like. And it's exactly on the same basis that God expects us to trust Him, by exploring who He is. But at some point along that journey of Amy and I getting to know one another, it became right and appropriate that we would make a commitment to one another and actually get married. Had we exhausted everything we could know about each other or every question that we would ever need to ask? No. Would new questions, maybe even uncertainties, emerge once we were then married? Yes. But the thing is, we knew enough about each other. We'd seen enough evidence to convince us that on the basis of that evidence, it was right to make an informed commitment to one another and be married. If after years of dating, I had told Amy that I wouldn't make a commitment to her until I'd every conceivable question answered, I would never have married her. In fact, in doing so and making that my standard, I would likely have communicated to her that I wasn't actually interested or serious about making a commitment to her, because the criterion by which I'd set in order for me to do so was completely unrealistic. And it's the same with committing your life to Jesus and becoming a Christian. Yes, the initial journey of getting to know God and exploring the evidence for His existence and character is crucial, so that we trust God not blindly, but on the basis of that evidence. But if, in all honesty, you're watching this video and you've done that and you've come to the point where you think Jesus is who He claimed to be and He did rise from the dead, I would suggest to you that it's maybe an appropriate time to make that commitment to become a Christian and to start following Jesus. That's what this student ended up doing, and it was fantastic. Now, yes, when you do that, you'll still have questions, maybe even doubts, as all Christians do. But you'll get to work through those with God and with Christian friends and leaders. You don't need to wait until you've every conceivable question answered before you become a Christian. Because if that is our criteria, it might suggest that our questions are simply a distraction from the fact that we may not want to follow God. Why should we hold God to an infinitely higher standard of trustworthiness than we hold other people? So perhaps today is the appropriate time to actually make that commitment and become a Christian. And if you'd like some practical advice on how to do that, then do check out our short answers video on how to become a Christian. And then, once you've done that, send us an email. We'd love to hear about it, and we'd love to help you get started with some resources on your Christian journey. You don't need to wait. You can make a commitment to Jesus Christ today.